Hey guys, welcome back. Um, I hope you all had a really great Wednesday. I went bird watching today with my music program at the Autobahn in Falmouth, but we had a great time. Thor, go, go, Thor, Thor, go. No, no, go, Thor, go. Do you want to get a cookie? Do you want to get a cookie? Do you want to get a cookie? Let's go get a cookie. Come on. Hey, want to get a cookie? Go. Go. Let's get a cookie. You okay? Let's get a cookie. Come on. All right. Sorry, guys. I gave Thor something to keep him busy because he started getting in the trash. I gave him one of his Himalayan bones. Typically, those last him for a while. They last him, I would say, the fastest I've seen him eat one is like a week, but sometimes it can be like over a week. Um, but anyways, I wanted to talk about a topic that I feel like has been happening. I do want to talk about. So it's the conversation of bullying and how bullying can inflict. So, really, how bullying at home, within your house, and within school districts, how they can be different and how they can not so much link to each other. But I will say there's two things for me is when I think of bullying, I think of public schools, or at least public school bullying, and at home bullying. So at home bullying could be getting picked on by a family member, maybe a parent, but that child or teenager will take that into school. But like, we're going to talk about it more as school being both a freedom basically a way of freedom, but also how schools are really, we're going to talk about it reversed, how schools can be the source of setting of freedom, and how being at home at, after the school bus drops you off or your parent picks you up and goes home, so home also being a safe spot where you have a caring family and those who are among you, because that's what's really important about bullying. Is we're going to be talking about settings on this live and people that are understanding and people that are not so much understanding when it comes to bullying. It depends on the setting. It depends actually where you are, how impactful it can be, and the people surrounding wherever you are, if they're supporting the victim of the bully or the person who's being picked on, or if they're all letting it fold out. Because districts are known to do that. Public schools are known to let bullying go on. The increase in bullying, I feel like 90% of the bullying we hear about often happens in public schooling. And I feel like, you hear less of it where there's kids that get transferred to private schools, because private schools have much more handle on what they tolerate and what they do not tolerate. But I wanted to jump into this because bullying is one of those topics that maybe a lot of us, I mean, I will say going to school, I was bullied not because I was smarter than the bully, but people are often bullied through how they behave. I was bullied through having autism. That's the thing, is anybody can bully you. I call it, so I will say bullies like to label people. That is one thing I've always have seen about people who give you the most hateful comments, or they, you know is that they will directly say it to you. But I was bullied through through autism. But the thing is, people that bully do not obtain these superpowers as those who have autism or a disability. I feel like bullies do pick on people because they're jealous. They're jealous over how smart somebody is, you know, how strong they are mentally and physically. Um but again, bullying doesn't just happen. I will say the two most common areas I find bullying being like a topic that's often, so I mean, public schools, and also being at home with parents that give off abuse, or really not caring or neglecting their children. But a lot of teenagers I know that don't have the best home life, meaning that they have abusive parents that either beat them, or, as I said, it could be something as like a breakup between the family, like a divorce, or something where, like, if you have siblings, you've got younger siblings, the oldest sometimes becomes the lesser known person, where it should be all equal. everybody should get the same amount of support, even if you have younger siblings. But what happens is parents that have multiple children, that have an older young man, older boy or older girl, daughter, older son or older daughter, and they have little siblings, it's very hard. Or if you're an only child. But I will say, if you've got a brother or a couple brothers or a couple sisters that are younger, bullying is very serious. Unfortunately, more than half of people that are victimized to bullying through public schools and being at home. I call it at home bullying. There's at home bullying and there's public school bullying, but I like breaking it up into those two subcategories because that's where a lot of bullying happens. I mean, for some people, teenagers that are bullied at home will often express their stress and depression in school. Maybe during class, they will act on behaviors that are very disturbing. But I want to bring up this story because this is inspired. So this is a real true event story that was created into a song, but it has to do with a young man or a teenager that was getting abused and bullied at home from his parents. And he would often take that stress and that ability of feeling hopeless into his classroom. And the unexpected happened. This young man really struggled because he kept, I mean, it was every day at home, like when people are corrupted with bullying, there's many people out there that just do not how to get away from it. And that's where, unfortunately, those we lose those we lose that commit suicide in schools or at home, 90 times, not 90% of those people are depressed, are unhappy because of being victims of bullying. And that is a true fact that many children, teenagers over the world, you don't really hear much of these cases, especially when it comes down to school shootings. They could be associated with, but as I said, school shootings are serious and so is bullying. But school shootings happen during school. I mean, so does. But I will say, school shootings have really peaked than having a student commit suicide in the middle of his entire classroom, his classmates and his home and his teacher. But the what I'm referring to is since what I'm telling you that there's a song linked to what I'm gonna say, but the song is called Jeremy. And those of you that know the band Pearl Jam know exactly what I'm talking about. But the song Jeremy is a beautiful song. I mean, I cry. I will say it's a song that is emotionally impactful. Um, but it started that Eddie Vedder had read in the newspaper that a young man named Jeremy, I think he was a 15-year-old high schooler, was a victim to at-home bullying, abuse, neglect. Um, but the story really is a strong message of those who are bullied, and really how it can corrupt people into their daily lives and destroy somebody from the inside. But this 15-year-old young man shot himself in front of in front of his entire classroom, everyone watching every moment of it, and it wasn't in the paper, it wasn't on the news. But I will say the song talks about a lot of society, of how bullying, was never allowed way back when, that schools were much more like handling control, whereas like now it just. But it is an incredibly powerful song that really. And when I hear this song, I do get emotional, because I don't necessarily like Pearl. I mean, I the only two songs I like from Pearl Jam are Even Flow and Jeremy. Those are the two songs that really stick out to me. But yeah, their song Jeremy is a haunting critic of teen insulation, bullying, and parental neglect. So yeah, so this comes by the standpoint of what it is being an insulation, teen insulation, meaning being cramped in a space you don't want to be in, but also parental neglect. So neglect meaning nobody gives you attention, nobody gives you what you need, nobody supports you. But the song runs deep through a young man who, I will say, it cuts the wood to this young man. As I said, the chilling narrative explores how a lonely, ignored boy is driven to commit suicide in front of his classmates as a final tragic cry for attention. So it looks like he was also bullied in school, but being teased and tormented by his classmates. Um, I won't describe the gun that this young man used, but the song. So the song that, or really the man that is referred to in the song, it's a true story of a 15-year-old Jeremy Wade Delly on January 8th, 1991, at Richard High School in Richardson, Texas. Dell walked into his second period English class, placed a gun on his desk, and shot himself in front of his classmates and teacher. The message behind the lyrics. Lead singer Eddie Vedder wrote the lyrics after reading a brief newspaper article about the tragedy. He felt compelled to turn that small, easily forgotten headline into a deeper story, highlighting the devastating consequences of ignoring the emotional distress of young people. Um, but I mean, the fact, because I love how, like, they put this is that, since, like, Eddie Vedder read a brief newspaper article about the tragic event, he felt compelled to turn that small, easily forgotten headline into a deeper story. But he highlighting the devastating consequences of ignoring the emotional distress of young people. So children, teenagers, the fact that parents and teachers will all ignore the emotional distress of people, of students, of students, in school, kids at home, getting ignored, um feeling like they don't have a voice, um but being emotional, and distress, meaning that they don't know, really, in distress of needing attention or needing somebody, in their life. But parental neglect. The lyrics detail a boy whose parents. So the lyrics detail someone like, about Jeremy, how his parents would stay out very late and basically left him to, I will say, unfortunately, left him to fend for himself. Left him, but it refers to as left him to build his own world, pointing to a lack of emotional support and connection at home. So, focusing on building his own world without his parents, who stayed out and didn't care, didn't care what he did. They left it all on him, but having to survive at home, lacking the emotional support and connection at home. Um, but also he got bullied and tormented by people in his school as well, but even pushing him into insulation. But the repeated line in the song Jeremy spoke in class today carries a dual meaning. While Jeremy really spoke in school, he finally spoke in the most violent and permanent way possible to ensure he was seen and heard. But I feel like, Eddie really did this because that's the thing, is society, the people that surround society are going to simply run over this topic because they don't feel that it's important. But I like how it states this, that the sacrifice resulted only in a tragic memory for his classmates and another brief paragraph in the local newspaper as the world simply moved on. The world moved on because they don't want to be involved. People within the community and society, especially how Jeremy didn't didn't have support. His parents always going out probably to drink and forget about him completely, leaving him at home to survive on his own. It's just one of those really beautiful messages, and really how a little paragraph in the newspaper and how much of an event this was. A tragic event this was, but was only. You can see the public didn't really want to know because they said there was only a short article about the tragic event. It wasn't a blow. It wasn't a big thing on the paper. It was a small little article. But things that are already small branch out into something a lot bigger of a topic or of a movement. Those who give us nothing but neglect, uncarelessness, abuse, that's though that is a group of people that bring you down, and that don't care if you fail or not. That because Jeremy stayed home, didn't have any parental figure. He had parents, but neglect neglection, far outweighs of that and abuse both outweigh. Jeremy was left basically to die at home. Like, I feel like his parents never paid attention to that. I don't even know if they were quite involved in wanting to be involved, that their own son took his life in school in front of his whole classroom and his teacher watching that event unfold in front of their eyes. But I'll be right back. I'm going to go get another drink. But there is another bullying. So actually, the next thing I'm going to talk about is a. So this is a film, but it's based off of a real guy as well in the movie. But the movie's actually called Bully, but it's a movie that came out in 2011. Um, but it actually talks about a young man about the same age as Jeremy, I believe, that was bullied often from what he looked like, but he had autism, but he was called Fish Lips. Bullies would call him Fish Lips.
Hey Tom,
Yeah,
did you give him food?
yeah, he did.
You did?
Yep.
Well, her thing's not broken. I bought two of the things in there and they're not even opened up.
No, I gave him food tonight. I gave him the rice.
Oh, I gotta get rid of that. Yeah, no. You gotta take him out of his own stuff. I gotta throw that out. But it made him sick.
But I just gave him a Himalayan bone.
Oh.
Because he started, I don't have any food in the trash, but he started, and then what was it? He pushed my door open, and yeah, so I had to follow him down the hallway. He went in the pantry and started to huff at me.
You are just so funny, aren't you? Yes, you are. Well, I'm open this up. Yeah. Oh, I'm doing stuff I have to get going for you. Well, not you.
All right. But another big thing is that if a lot of parents that are good parents, and when the teachers don't do anything to help the person who is the target of bullying, and the teacher or the director of school, the principal, aren't stepping in to doing anything, but the parents of the victim that is being bullied want to go all out for their child. um I found out the truth pretty later on in life that, like, honestly, and I just thought, if you can, okay, if your parents, right, the parents of the person who's being picked on, have money, or have really the money to transfer your child or children, to be plural, to transfer to a private school, great. Great. That's an awesome feeling. But having a board meeting with the school district, and not having money, or the thing is, schools, unfortunately, if they're really supporting somebody who's being victimized and being bullied by teachers, honestly, instead of I hate to say it, but the teachers that were in the wrong should have gotten fired. If they didn't want to spend money on transitioning students who had a harder time to private schools, and they didn't want to spend the money, I feel like they would just be as scared as losing, or as, I guess, not demanding, but if they lost a couple great teachers, you don't want to feel sorry for them, because if they don't want to, because the thing is, teachers are getting paid to work at schools, to work with students. That is their job. That's their job. And what I've learned in life is, if you run into a teacher, out in public, other than in school, and they don't say hi, but are still friendly to you in school, they honestly don't have to talk to you on weekends when they're not teaching. Some do, some don't. But again, it's much different that parents that have money can take their children out without having, unfortunately, when you have a mother and father especially my mom, a lot of her jobs were during the weekdays, meaning that she would work weekdays, but I know she wouldn't have had enough money to transfer me to. But honestly, now that I look back, it was the best thing for me, going to a private school, learning what it's like to deal with real life situations, but knowing that neglect and abuse work as a team, going really nowhere, but teachers wanting to immobilize you to that school, even if they have a teacher or teachers who have the desire to quit from what they see from what other teachers put students into, that school's losing money, especially if it happens in a public school. I personally don't care at the least of really. I get it. I personally feel like that parents have expectations for their children to go to school, making sure when they come home they had a good day. But again, the message in that song, Jeremy states, when you live in an insulated world with your parents neglect and not giving any attention or support to you at home, that is weight that is building. That's weight that is that weight is collecting by every moment. But bullying, I feel like back then, bullying I think was handled a lot better in public schools, but it disintegrates too. I feel like there's I kind of phrase it as you you can't drive with a flat tire unless and you can't drive with three tires. Meaning if one of them's already flat, you have your backup tire, or if your car came with an extra tire to put on. The bully is the bully pretends to be the sharp object in the road, and you're the tire that runs over it, and the tire pops while you're driving, meaning that the bully wants you to feel hurt and wants you to feel like you are nothing. You are not a meaningful person to them. So they're going to act out of being a nail on pavement, waiting until the tire hits the nail, that bully's popping the tire, trying to poke and pop the tire. But honestly, I'm just, for me, when I think of like, when I think of school shootings too, I think of a similar thing where it's not in the form of suicide, but having somebody either that attends the school, meaning they're a student or were a past student, because bullying doesn't just have to happen in at home. Because Jeremy was being made, he was being teased and make fun of at school, but the full on neglect and surviving on just creating a world for himself without support and attention from his parents makes it 100 times hard. And we don't even know, like, if that could be the same ordeal that happens or something similar that might happen to those who go into a school and unfortunately kill students and teachers. We don't really know a lot of the situations that do go on before a school shooting. I think there's many people that want to know, but that's the fact of the reality, though, is we don't know what occurs in people's behavior and how somebody can respond, or how whoever is a victim doesn't know how to because those who fall victim don't know how to respond. They're scared for their life. Again, but we often state that we were almost in danger, we were almost killed. Yes, I get that. I definitely get that. And it's a scary situation to be in. I'm not saying at all that it is okay to harm people. It is absolutely not okay to harm people. But for me, it's oblivious to know, like, could this be similar to the whole Jeremy story, that children have to survive, people in their youth have to survive, on their own without a parent, but maybe have like a family member who doesn't pay attention. Or as I said, parents, if they do have parents, they don't care as long as that their child creates a world of their own. Those parents aren't going to care if their child is destroyed, or the harm or the punishment or consequences that go along with that. But quickly, I'm actually gonna do another live at 11. But we'll talk about a couple other things. But I do want to mention, since I want to give another, um, so as I said, it's not a similar story of the Jeremy. Actually, the story about Jeremy and how that small of that event got so little attention, to the point where, like, somebody who is famous and who is in a band expanded it into something so much bigger, and to remind everybody that youth without support and without guidance can destroy somebody, and can really destroy them growing up. Meaning, but I believe in youth. You learn from your parents, you learn from your whoever is raising you. That's a part of growth. You learn from watching your parents do things. You observe, you listen, you learn to respect. You're, when I mean, but I'm gonna find Alec. So yeah, the movie I'm referring to, um the young man is named Alex Libby. But it is a, But yeah, so the documentary talks about, and this is a true story. This is another true, but Alex Libby is a legit real person. So he's not an act, like he's not portraying anybody's, he's playing himself in this documentary. But it talks about how he got bullied until the end of middle school in 8th grade. So between 6th and his ending year in 8th grade, he was a victim of being bullied. He had no friends until a documentary that Lee Hirsch made about bullying at Edlin, Oklahoma Middle School. Um, People were bullied because of their looks and how popular they were. Now, Alex Libby is known all around the world. So, one of the things in the documentary, so what people would call Alex was fish lips. So, again, that describes of how bullies make fun of how somebody looks and doesn't like how popular that person is, meaning that they could be smarter than them. They could school them in any subject they wanted to. I personally think if people didn't have so much of a crappy attitude towards others, they could be just as smart. If they didn't bully, they could be just as smart and learn, instead of to keep the bullying thing go, they could work out of it, and but yeah, or take accountability, or the bully takes responsibility of what they say and apologize. um I feel like for me, when I got bullied in middle school, because my situation was similar to Alex. Like, the bullying started when I was in 6th grade, and because I wasn't even at Mollyocket at, because I had started Future Builders in 8th grade. So I spent all of 6th and part of 7th at Mollyocket. But I was bullied, and it was really of, it wasn't on how I looked, but it was about how teachers would would discipline, how they would be very mean and neglectful to those who were who were special, thinking that they could drain you out of your gift, your superpower. Unfortunately, they don't have the tools to do that. If anything, I feel like anybody has control over their own body to know when they feel drained, rather than somebody draining you. You only drain yourself. Nobody can drain you or make you feel drained. you're the one that can make that happen. It's all about growth. There's things that we might need help getting through in life, and there's things we can do all on our own. But I'll be right back. I'm gonna come back on in about an hour, but I think Thor has to go out. But